Draft League is back on the rise. More players, more tournaments, and more hype than we've seen in years. But as it grows, there are still some serious hurdles that Pokemon needs to clear to keep that momentum going. What's going on, my fellows? It's your boy DyeItTight. With Gen 10 on the horizon, Pokemon has a real chance to fix what's broken and keep the love for competitive play, especially Draft League, going strong. So today, let's talk about what is holding us back and how Game Freak can finally get it right. But before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe, and go ahead and join the Discord to keep the conversation going. First up, let's talk about the timer. Probably the most frustrating part of competitive Pokemon today. Right now, we're stuck with both a chess timer and a total game timer. Even if you're careful with your own time, the total game timer can still run out and suddenly you lose. Not because of a mistake you made, but because the clock ran out on you. In a Draft League match, this becomes even more frustrating. Even if you do everything correctly, making smart plays, managing your time, your opponent can still drain the timer and make you lose just because the total game timer hits 0. It's not about strategy or decision making anymore, it's about who manages to outlast the clock. Gen 10 needs to fix this. A better timer system would allow players to actually think and strategize without the constant pressure of an arbitrary countdown determining the outcome of the game. Another big issue competitive Pokemon faces is the current structure of Wi-Fi Draft League competitions. The way these events are scheduled is a mess. You have to set up a competition a day in advance, and once it's scheduled, you only have a 3-hour window to actually play the match. That's a huge problem. People have busy lives, time zones don't always line up, and life just gets in the way. And here's the kicker, if you mess up that competition at any point, whether it's by registering the wrong team or making a mistake with the rules, you're just stuck waiting until the competition is over to make another one. It's not like you can quickly just fix the issue and jump back into it. You're forced to sit through the rest of the comp, potentially losing valuable time. By the time this gets sorted, you might miss your next match or even be completely disqualified. For Gen 10, it's time to rethink how we schedule and play these competitions. Allow players more flexibility in when they can play, and make sure the systems are in place to prevent these awkward time constraints. Pokemon should be about the battles, not the clock. Now, let's talk about something that's been a huge issue in competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon, the limited Pokédex. We've been getting fewer and fewer old Pokemon available in recent generations, and it's holding the scene back. When the total dex was available, players could pull from a much wider variety of Pokemon, which allowed for more creativity and a variety in team building. In Gen 9, we've had to work around a restricted dex, and it's been frustrated. Certain types, Pokemon, and strategies have been completely cut off from the competitive scene, limiting what players can bring to the table. That's not the kind of flexibility we need in a competitive environment. For Gen 10, it's time to bring back the full dex. Let players have access to the full range of Pokemon once again, so we can see new, exciting matchups and strategies. Competitive Pokemon on Wi-Fi should be about variety and choice, not about being restricted to what's available. Next up, we have a major issue in competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon, the over-centralizing gimmicks that have dominated the metagame in recent years. We're talking about things like Dynamax and even Terra, mechanics that completely change the way battles are played and often leave everything else feeling irrelevant. These gimmicks are fun for casual play and even VGC, but when they take over competitive Draft League play, it creates a situation where everything else feels secondary. For example, Terra type shifting forces you to predict what your opponent's Terra will be, and suddenly every decision hinges on that mechanic. It's not about the Pokemon themselves anymore, it's about whether you can handle the gimmick. At the same time, it's important that there is some sort of gimmick to keep the meta from becoming stale. Let's look back at Gen 8, where Dynamax became unusable, and the metagame stagnated as a result. Without some sort of shifting mechanic to spice things up, the battles just don't have the same energy. That's why Gen 10 should focus on finding a balance, keeping the gimmick aspect in play to keep things interesting, but without it taking over the entire game. Let's move away from over-centralizing gimmicks like Dynamax or Terra and focus on strategies, team composition, and tight matchups. Competitive Pokemon on Wi-Fi should always evolve, but it shouldn't feel like the gimmicks are running the show. Speaking of gimmicks though, when it comes to adding excitement and depth to competitive Pokemon, Mega Evolutions stand out as a mechanic that always enhances strategy without taking over the game. Unlike Dynamax or Terra, which can often feel like the focus of the entire battle, Megas give a Pokemon a meaningful power boost while still keeping the essence of the battle intact. What makes Megas unique is that they're not over-centralizing. They don't completely alter how the match plays out, they simply add a new layer of strategy. Choosing when and which Pokemon to Mega Evolve seems like a meaningful decision, something that gives more control back to the player rather than making everything depend on a gimmick. In Gen 10, bringing back Megas would offer the perfect middle ground between keeping the meta fresh and avoiding the over-centralizing nature of other mechanics. Rather than relying on mechanics like Terra or Dynamax, Megas would give players the chance to showcase their strategic skill while still shaking up battles in a fun, balanced way. It's about bringing excitement back without letting one mechanic run the entire game. Breeding in Pokemon has always been a time-consuming and tedious process, especially for competitive play. From getting the right IVs to maxing out EVs and natures, it can take hours, if not days, just to get the perfect Pokemon. The problem is that it takes away from what should be the fun part, the battles. What if breeding didn't have to be a chore? Gen 10 could easily take a page from Pokemon Showdown and allow players to easily adjust EVs and IVs on the fly without the need for tedious manual work. No more breeding dozens of Pokemon to get the perfect one. Instead, you could just jump into the game with the exact Pokemon you want, tweak its stats, and focus on the strategy of the battle itself. This would free up more time for players to focus on battling and team building instead of spending countless hours on breeding. Now, that being said, some players do resort to genning, using external tools to create perfect Pokemon, but while that's an opinion, it's some that is frowned upon by the Pokemon Company and takes away from the spirit of the game in their eyes. In competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon, the focus should be on the gameplay, not grinding out perfect stats. Let's make it easier to get the Pokemon we want and put more effort into battles that really matter. One feature that could really change the competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon experience right now is the introduction of spectator mode. Right now it's hard to follow battles outside of your own, especially if you want to learn from other players and enjoy watching the action. Imagine if we had the ability to watch live battles, not just the ones you're participating in or see on YouTube. Spectator mode would allow players to view ongoing matches in real time, making it easier to learn new strategies, pick up on mistakes, and just appreciate the skills of top players. It could even make the community feel more connected, as players could tune into high-level competitors or just follow along with friends' battles. It would give the entire competitive scene a more dynamic feel. In Gen 10, adding spectator mode would enhance the experience, creating a more interactive and educational environment for everyone. It's a win-win, and it would only add to the excitement of competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon. Easily the most frustrating thing in competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon is when you're in the middle of an intense match and suddenly
we'll be back.
The connection drops. It's not only annoying for the player who gets disconnected, but it also leaves the outcome of the game up in the air unless you go through a full recreation. In some cases, a loss can be unfairly attributed to someone due to no fault of their own. That's why disconnect recovery is so important. Imagine if there was a system in place that saves the match state when someone disconnects and allows them to pick up right where they left off. This could be a simple way to ensure that a fair outcome is reached, even in the event of an accidental disconnect. Now, it's a small quality of life change that it could make a huge difference in terms of maintaining the integrity of competitive battles. In Gen 10, implementing disconnect recovery would help make the competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon matches more reliable and less stressful. Whether you're battling in a draft league competition or a casual match, knowing that your match isn't going to be ruined by a dropped connection would give players the confidence to really invest in the battle itself. No more worrying about the game getting robbed of a win because of a technical issue. The last key feature that could significantly improve the competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon Draft League experience right now is the ability to see more information within the game itself. Right now, certain features like HP percentages or the moves your opponents have clicked are not readily available. Players often have to rely on external tools or memory to keep track of important details. What if you could easily see your opponent's HP percentage or a quick view of the moves they've already used? Having this kind of information available in-game would help level the playing field by giving both players equal access to crucial data during the match. This would make the battles feel more intuitive and provide a more strategic element to decision making. In Gen 10, showing this type of information in-game would allow players to focus on the gameplay itself without having to keep track of everything mentally or consult external sources. It's a small change that can improve the overall experience and make battles feel more streamlined and less stressful. Having the right information at your fingertips can be the difference between making a calculated decision and missing a crucial move. So there you guys have it, some big changes that could really turn things around for competitive Wi-Fi Pokemon in Gen 10 Draft League. Whether it's fixing the timer issues, bringing back fan favorite features like Megas, or making breeding and battling easier, these changes could make a world of difference. Competitive Pokemon needs to evolve, just like the game itself. If you agree or have any other ideas, let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more Pokemon content. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.